We're going to continue with another lesson from the book entitled The Creed of At-Tahawi, a brief explanation of the Sunni doctrine. And this is session 13 for people who are following. In the last session, we spoke about a movement that was started, that was innovated about 250 years ago by a man named Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab. And this movement spread a lot of harm to the Muslims and killed and slaughtered many Muslims, murdered many Muslims. And among the beliefs of the Wahhabi movement, they call themselves Salafis. Now be aware that they don't call themselves Wahhabis, generally speaking. They call themselves Salafis. The Salafi movement, they teach that Allah is a giant entity that is either sitting in person or hovering above the arsh. They say that Allah laughs and has a giant smiling face. They teach that Allah Ta'ala has enormous hands, fingers, a shin, and a big foot.
Allah has two hands. Come on, we believe that or not? We actually believe that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created certain things with his own hands. Even so, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Kun innama amruna إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates kun. But there are certain things which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created with his own hands, made it with his own hand as a reference to its greatness. Allah wrote the Torah with his own hand. Jannat Adn ya ikhwa. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala planted its trees with his own hands. We believe Allah has fingers too.
The meanings are known to us. Because some people say, we don't know the meanings. Allah said face, Allahu A'lam. Some people say, MashaAllah, what a nice answer. It's not a nice answer, it's an answer of an ignorant person. Because face means face. Allah has a face. Allah has hands, Allah has eyes.
An example of this, Allah Ta'ala has a hand. Amran, does Allah have a hand? In Surah Sad, verse 75, Allah Ta'ala in the most conspicuous, explicit, beautiful terms clearly tells us humanity that He created Adam with what? With His own two hands. Allah Ta'ala has a foot. Does He not? Then Allah Ta'ala places His foot in hellfire. His beautiful, magnificent, excellent foot. And then hellfire says, Qattun, qattun, enough, enough. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a shin. A what? A shin.
You say, Allah has two hands, but yes, is it true that both hands are right hands?
Very good. Is it true that both His hands are right? Yes, it is true. Allah Ta'ala tells us, Ya akhi Nazri, that He's got a beautiful face.
This belief that they teach clearly is not from the belief of the Muslims, but is something that Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, he resuscitated the innovation of the previous people who deviated from the teachings of Islam. And inshallah, in other sessions, we'll talk more about the history of where Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab got his innovated ideas from. But in talking about this belief that of these people ascribing to Allah various limbs and organs, this belief is known as anthropomorphism. Anthro means like human, and morph means shape. And these people, they ascribe to Allah some kind of form, some kind of shape. And Allah Ta'ala is different from all of that. With that said, it segues nicely into section 32 of Abu Ja'far at-Tahawi's Aqidah, in which he says, the one who ascribes to Allah a human characteristic is a blasphemer. Hence, he who looks thoroughly into this takes warning, refrains from the sayings of the blasphemers, and knows that Allah, having His attributes, does not resemble mankind. So this is critical here, because again, the so-called Salafi movement, they ascribe to Allah various limbs and organs, and this is not the belief of the Muslims. And please warn people and let people know that what these people are teaching, does not comply with the teachings of Prophet Muhammad. And it's an important statement, and it's good to memorize that the Abu Ja'far in Arabic, he said, "Man wasafa Allah bi ma'anim min ma'anil bashar faqad kafar." That whoever ascribes to Allah any sort of human characteristic, this person is a non-believer. And be careful also, because this some people who follow this so-called Salafi movement, when you mention to them that it is unbefitting to say that, for instance, that Allah has a shin, because a shin is in the English language, the word shin has a meaning, and the word shin in the English language refers to the tibia, the bone in the lower part of the leg. So it's not possible for them. They say that, well, Allah has a shin. And then you explain to them, well, this is a body part. They say, oh no, but not like that, not like ours. Well, then it's not a shin that you're talking about. But anyway, it is enough that these people, the so-called Salafis, they attribute to Allah the occupation of space, and they believe that time passes upon Allah. They believe that Allah goes through changes. So that is enough to indicate, to prove that they resemble Allah to the creations. And when a person says Allah has these various limbs, and when he tries to cover it up by saying but not like ours, this still does not protect the person from falling into blasphemy. Because Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, he did say, whoever says that Allah is a body, and even if he says, but unlike other bodies, this person, he still commits blasphemy. So Allah Ta'ala doesn't have any characteristics of the humans, nor does Allah Ta'ala have any of the characteristics of the creations. And to go on and explain, to continue in explaining the statement of At-Tahawi, it says, whoever believes or says that Allah has any human attribute is a blasphemer, because this person contradicts the explicit text in verse 11 of Surah Ash-Shura, verse 11, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ, which means nothing at all, or there is absolutely nothing at all that resembles Allah in any way whatsoever. Hence, attributing sitting, ascension, or descent or to Allah is likening Allah to the creations, even if the person does not recognize or realize that when he believes that Allah is in a location and it goes through motion, even if he doesn't understand that he is resembling Allah to the creations, indeed he is. And he would not be a worshipper of Allah, because he would be worshipping something he thinks, he imagines to be Allah. And Allah Ta'ala is not like anything we can imagine. And Allah Ta'ala is not anything like what is in time or what is in place. The Creator is greater. So the one who believes that Allah is attributed with sitting or ascent or descent, that this is in clear disagreement with the aforementioned ayah, لَيْسَ كَمِثْلِهِ شَيْءٍ, with other ayat, other verses from the Quran, along with the hadiths, as well as the scholarly consensus. Because the consensus of the Muslims is that the Creator is absolutely different from the creations, and that the Creator does not have any of the characteristics or properties of bodies. As Imam Abu Hassan al-Ash'ari, radiyallahu anhu, he said, the one who believes that Allah is a body, then he is ignorant about his Lord, and he is a blasphemer. So anyone who believes that Allah has the characteristics of human beings, this person is not a Muslim. And in America, you have a group that claims to be Muslim, and they teach that Allah was born in the year 1877. This group teaches that Allah Ta'ala, the creator of the universe, was born roughly 125 years ago, 130 years ago. This is not the belief of the Muslims. So be warned and let people know that this is not the belief of the Muslims. This is the belief that was taught by Elijah Muhammad, a man who died here in the States in 1975. And other people have adopted his teachings and continue to teach that. This belief that the human being, that Allah is a human being. Now you have the Wahhabis on the one hand, they claim that Allah isn't a human, but they attribute to Allah human-like qualities. You have other groups who were more extreme in resembling Allah to the creations, like the followers of Elijah Muhammad or Elijah Poole. And in the past there was a group called the Ismailis. and they were the rulers of what was called the Fatimid Empire. Usually, this is how they refer to it and refer to the empire in the books, the history books. That this Fatimid Empire was ruled by a group called the Ismailis, and they used to worship a man named Hakim. And this group was among the extremists among the Shia, among the extreme end of the Shia, and they were called the Seveners. And the followers of Elijah Muhammad and the so-called Nation of Islam, they adopted many of the ideology, or some of the ideologies of this so-called the Seveners, as they were called. Even the play with the number symbolism and the way that they would distort the verses of the Quran. They would take explicitly clear verses of the Quran and distort them and give them their own meaning. So the Ismaili group, they were active around 1,000 to 1,100 years ago, 1,000 to 1,100 years ago. They were active then, and then the so-called Nation of Islam, they resuscitated a lot of those teachings. So, mashallah, when a person, he learns the Islamic knowledge, and he learns the history, he learns his Aqidah, and he learns the history of the different groups, he sees that a lot of these deviant groups just, they keep recycling themselves through history. But the distinction between the people of truth and everyone else, the core distinction, is that we single out Allah Ta'ala alone for worship, and that Allah does not need or resemble any of the creations in any way whatsoever, and that Allah is the only one who creates, the only one who brings things into existence.